Everyone, I'll try to refer to these long paragraphs as seldom as possible, but this is one chapter where I tend to over rely on a few of these paragraphs, but just go with me on this for a few sentences, if you will. The way to solve a problem depends to some extent on the problem. For instance, if you want to fly to Los Angeles, you might call various airline or travel agents or even surf the web, etc., for kayak and Travelocity. But in contrast, if your problem is to balance your checkbook, you normally would not ask for assistance from somebody. These are domain-specific problem-solving approaches. They only work for a limited class of problems. And she reviews only a certain class of general domain-independent techniques. These methods are stated at a general enough level that in principle they can be used on a wide variety of problems as opposed to flying to Los Angeles or balancing a checkbook. So for instance, here's one that is broad enough that we can speculate about. Think of 10 words beginning with C that are food or drink. And of course, she gives a couple of illustrations here of Cheerios and Cheez-Its and Chex and a lot of junk foods there. But if we really worked at it, we could come up with 10 words that start with C that are foods like cucumber or kumquats or other pieces of produce that may fit that bill. Now, other things may be slightly more complicated, but nonetheless can lend themselves to illustration. So as your author gives an example in the book, how can I get money to a foreign hotel? And back in the 90s, this was more of a challenge. Money order, Amex, Western Union, traveler's checks. You could tell by Galati's references here that she's a little bit aged. These days, we'd probably just wire it or even upload it with a credit card. But as we think through things, how we can arrange a trip somewhere that may be a little bit complicated, you have to indulge in these generate and test ideas. What is the best way that would work out? I just traveled to another country this past July in 2023, and there was some planning involved. It's a fraud experience using a passport. Even though we were Americans going just into Vancouver, nothing too exotic there. The entire plane load was American people. They still asked questions, and you had to be prepared for some things. So these sorts of planning things, how do we do this? Well, we have to generate and test ideas to see if it's entirely feasible. You think of Elon Musk in his early days. How do you make an electric car? How do you, if I were going to buy an electric car, how would I get from here to Phoenix if I were driving? Are there enough stations? Well, we generate and test ideas, and you can do so sort of informally if the problem space is broad enough. So the process that she used in solving a problem about getting to the hotel in a foreign country is generate and test. As the name suggests, it consists of generating possible solutions and then testing them. So would Amex help, etc. Now, for a few of the ideas, the test didn't work very well, but then finally you arrive at something that is a plausible way to handle something. So that's this idea. It may be the last thing that you ever try, but that's the one. So the generate and test technique loses its effectiveness pretty rapidly when there are many possibilities, when there's no particular guidance for the generation project. So this last few sentences is pretty important to this idea. The generate and test technique can be useful when there aren't a lot of possibilities to keep track of. If you've lost your keys somewhere between the cafeteria and your room and you made immediate stops in the classroom, etc., you can use this technique to help you search. So if there's a limited array of possibilities, then it generally is effective to use this generate and test technique. And we generally find it pretty effective to solve somewhat simpler problems that are broad enough that they don't have limited applications, like booking Travelocity or balancing a checkbook.